us, he immediately said yes. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce my good friend, the leader of the minority leader of the Republican Party, Kevin McCarthy. Thanks so much.
Good morning, all.
So first of all, Mr. Leader, thank you so much for saying yes.
No, congratulations.
First step always.
Yeah.
You know, we met in an interesting fashion, and I think, you know, one cool way to start this off is to sort of talk about the origin story of how you and I became friends and how we met. And so I'll let you tell the story. You tell it better than I do.
Well, you know, we met in an interesting way, not by the phone or anything else. He was just stealing all these jobs from California, but like all the other places here. You know, he put that tweet out like, "How can I help?" And what I thought from a perspective is, how interesting is that? Just somebody that's offering, and I didn't know who he was, didn't know his politics or anything else, but I thought that's a great approach. And I called him up and said, I'd like to get together because I like how you just say, how can I help? This is what we got to find in this country. How do we collaborate? How do we find solutions? And really in a time of COVID, in a time where people can live anywhere, I was frustrated within my own state, not my city. I love my city. But people were leaving, and at the very beginning, I mean, I'm from California. It was people of wealth that were leaving, but now my neighbors were leaving because they were unhappy. And they were looking for other places. And what was interesting in this approach was, here was a mayor who people were coming and they were complaining about California, and he wasn't bashing, he wasn't doing anything else, he just said, how could I help? And I thought that was just a great approach. When I spent some time with you, I love your perspective. So,
thank you, Leader. You know, it's funny, all of a sudden, and I'll put a little flesh on the bone of the story. You know, Twitter, which is, you know, this social media app, some of you may have heard of. All of a sudden, I get this random DM, and I had actually put a billboard in San Francisco that said, hey, if you're thinking of moving to Miami, DM me. And I get a random DM from the leader. So I said, maybe he's moving to Miami, I don't know. But it was great. He came, and we had a very similar sit-down to the one we're having now, what I call a cafecito tech talk. And I think it's important because, you know, I've often said, you know, as a leader in your city, you have a responsibility to run your government as a corporation, a business, right? We have to run the federal government. But I think we have, you know, additional responsibilities to lead, to inspire, to try to help build ecosystems. And so, you know, for me, we started these Cafecito Tech Talks, and the leader was kind enough to come to Miami, which he'll be in, I think, tomorrow or later today. And he, you know, we had this conversation, and it wasn't, to his point, it wasn't partisan, it wasn't, you know, divisive at all. It was something that was meant completely to have an honest conversation about what works, what doesn't work, what works in cities. And so it was wonderful. But I often say, if you don't tell your story, this is a message for the mayors, if you don't tell your story, somebody else is going to tell your story, and you're not going to like their version of it. So,
and I'll tell you my impression. When I was going there, I didn't know his affiliation. I didn't know what his politics were. But what was interesting, and we never really talked that, he took me through the mayor's office. That's where we met. And what I walked away with, he could tell me the heritage of not just the city, but also what a great background with his father being the first Cuban mayor, but just the culture of the entire city. And then when we sat and talked, he had the culture, but he was taking the tradition of the past and apply it to a changing future. Whereas, yes, a lot of things were coming to Miami, some because of him, but some just because of what other people were doing. And he was concerned about, how do I build it right? Let me learn from things that you did right, but let me learn from your mistakes. So if we're going to bring tech people in, that's great. But what does that do to the tradition here? How can they be involved? And what's the next step? Why are tech people now leaving? I mean, what pushed them away? And I just felt that was very refreshing. And so I took the next step where, when we left, I started setting up Zoom calls with people in California who were my friends, who were disgruntled as well. And I said, you ought to talk to them, right? Because he was planning what the future held if people were going to come, but he was planning it in a way that those who were already there could be a part of it, that it wasn't just outside people.
Yeah, it really so much appreciated. I think what happens is, you know, we in public service, we get caricatured by the press oftentimes, right? And what happens is when you get to know somebody, a human being, a person, you get to know who they are. You laugh with them. You share common experiences. And there's so much more in this world, in this country, that binds us than separates us. But if you were to listen to the news, all you would hear are the things that we may not agree with, or the things that try to push us away from each other. And so I found it very refreshing, and the friendship has been from that perspective. I want to talk a little bit about my origin story and your origin story in the context of, how we continue to have success and prosperity in this country. My dad was exiled from Cuba, his country of birth, because a charismatic leader there many years ago said, hey, if we just take over everyone's business, we take over everyone's property, don't worry, we'll take care of it. We will guarantee equality for everyone. And the only equality that was delivered was equal misery for all of the people of Cuba. And so my dad came here, he was, I think he was 7 years old, 12 years old, and he was the ninth of 14 kids, 14-person family. And he came to DC, he actually emigrated to DC, which is super cold, by the way. I think it was like 18 degrees last night. I was smoking a cigar, and why would anybody want to live here? So I apologize for the time that you have to live here. And, he got a full scholarship to high school, full scholarship, presidential scholarship to college, and 2 graduate degrees from Harvard, written 8 books, speaks 4 or 5 languages, the quintessential American dream. Isn't that what we're supposed to be about?
Mm-hmm. And before I tell you mine, I first want to thank you all. You probably do the hardest job of anybody who's elected. But you do it in a manner.
You guys, we'll take that. We'll take
Look,
that.
You're closest to the people. People think you're responsible for everything, from the streets to the garbage to foreign policy to the kids' education. And and by different mayors, you have different powers. And it's not viewed as partisan as well, but you're also the great laboratories and the time and place in which you're serving. You're serving during a pandemic, but you're serving during a transformational time of our nation. Because our nation is now finding through technology and others, we don't need to live in one place or the other. So there are big cities that before, people just had to come and they would put up with whatever. But now people are making decisions different on the quality of life and other things that they don't have to be there so they can make a different choice. So it really is almost a competition of where to be. And you're not in competition with each other, but there's got to be a basis of what people look to, and small things become bigger things. Look, in my world of politics, no teacher I ever had thought I could be elected to anything, and my family probably didn't either. And to be fair, I grew up in a family of all Democrats, and I happen to be a Republican. I'm the youngest in the family. I'm Irish and Italian, so we had the best fights in the neighborhood. No one was better than us. I got out of high school. My folks didn't have wealth, so I couldn't go away to college, so I just went to junior college, right? But I always instilled in me a work ethic, and I would go to this one liquor store. You could figure out why I went there. But the guy also had a car dealer's license. I grew up in Bakersfield, California. I can't get elected anywhere else. And so I would pay him $100 to take me to the LA car auctions where all the dealers would bring their trade-ins, and I would buy and sell cars, and I would flip them to pay my way through college. Now, I found out later it's illegal, but I did not know that why I did it, because you had to have a different license. And when you're going to community college, what do? On the weekends, you go away visit your friends who are away at college, right? My best friend was at Stanford, SC, and San Diego. So this weekend, I was going to go to San Diego State to visit some buddies. So I go to the grocery store to cash a check so I have some cash for the weekend. It's 1985. I'm 20 years old. The day before the lottery started in California. So I'm cashing this check, I buy a lottery ticket, and I won the lottery. True story, right? But they didn't have lotto. So put yourself in my place. You're 20 years old, it's Friday night, it's 1985, and you win $5,000 in 85 money, right? But you end up 10 minutes from Tijuana by the end of the night, right? So I come back, I take my folks to dinner, give my brother and sister each $100, and I take the majority of the rest of the money, I put it in one stock, because I like to take risk. I made 30% of my money in 6 weeks. So the semester comes, I take a break. I go and I try to buy a franchise, but no one will sell me one because I'm 20 years old. Another thing is I never give up. So I go and I open a deli. And I even build the counter in my dad's garage. There's 3 lessons I learned as a small business, and you always have to remember this with all you're the first to work, last to leave, last to be paid. I'm out of money. I go put on my credit card. I buy this big sign about my restaurant, vinyl. I put it outside. I'm in there early in the morning, like 4 employees cutting up the meat and the salads. And this pickup truck from the city pulls up, and they're knocking on the glass door. 2 hours before I'm open, I said, I bet they want to give me a key to the city, right? The guy wanted to give me a ticket. He wanted to give me a ticket for my sign because it was past 7 days. And I said, I don't get this. I spend money to buy a sign, to bring more people in, to buy sandwiches, to pay your salary. I want you to work with me, not against me. But you know what? A food critic came in. My business did really well. So now I had enough money that I paid my whole way through college, and I wouldn't have to work, and no one in my family had finished 4-year degrees. So I sell my business. I'm going to college, and then the paper said, be a summer intern in Washington, D.C. with the local congressman. Didn't know the guy, but thought he'd be lucky to have me, so I applied. You know what he did? He turned me down. But this is the end of the story. I am now elected to the seat I couldn't get an internship for. Only in America could that happen. And so,
That's beautiful. And I often think, you don't know someone until you know their story. And I think it humanizes us, and it makes people understand the adversity, the will to succeed, the persistence, and the true Americanism, which I always say, every single person deep inside of themselves has whatever their vision is of the American dream. It's different for everybody. It's not necessarily the white picket fence for every single person, but we all find a way to get there, and it's incredible. So, I like to think as Miami, we follow sort of 3 simple rules, right? And people often ask me, well, how is this happening in Miami? And of course, like you said, there are some macro factors that are not in our control. What is in our control? We've tried to keep taxes low. We've kept taxes at the 1960s level in terms of our millage rate. And what's happened? Our budget has doubled in size, okay? So people think you got to sort of raise taxes to generate more income, more revenue. And we've seen the exact opposite. As we've lowered taxes, more investments come in, more people have decided to live there, and so we have actually more resources to deal with things like homelessness, for example. Second thing we did was, and we talked about this in our conversation, we focused on public safety. I know that it's become controversial nowadays to talk about public safety, and certainly we believe in officer accountability and giving them the tools which we've gotten for them to be accountable. But police officers in this country now are not well paid. Right? They're asked to do more and more and more, right? More than just be a police officer, be in the social settings, and they've never had more scrutiny, than ever before. Their lives are at risk on the one hand, but then their lives are also at risk if they make a mistake in a split second on the other hand. So it's just really, really tough. And so as we've invested in our police departments, we saw a shocking correlation. Crime went down. Mm-hmm. Shocking correlation, right? That was a joke. And then the third thing is, and something that we talked a lot about, is we leaned into innovation. You are a very innovative, you're pro-innovation, you're pro-tech. And when my 3-year-old daughter, uses her pacifier, to take a selfie, I know that we're stuck with tech, whether we like it or not, whether it's big tech or small tech, or whether it's, all the issues that become partisan around tech. You can talk about them till you're blue in the face. We're not giving our iPhones away. We're not putting them back. So how do you see that sort of city building formula in the context of the mass migration that we've seen of people migrating to states like Florida and cities like Miami?
Well, what's happening is technology allows us that we can live anywhere. A lot of people would think they've got to move away, but now with the pandemic, that transformed things. So you could have meetings, different places, you don't have to travel all the time. I will tell you that regardless of party, wherever else, crime is going to be probably the biggest issue in any election. It doesn't matter, you want to feel safe, and it doesn't matter what part of the city you're in. And this is really the core. You've got to feel safe. Your children have to feel safe, and others. I look at technology in a way to innovate, but not to innovate a better customer service. Unfortunately, in federal government, the government gets so big it's difficult, right? I envy your ability to make other decisions and make things happen faster. I've really been trying to innovate the VA. You would think that would be the place that would be least political or controversial. Uber will let you get a driver, you rate the driver can rate you, you get the documents all right there. And then I sit around and I see veterans were dying because they're trying to call on a phone and a call center doesn't work. But if we brought technology, and lots of times in government, you think you have to build a whole new software system. No, let's start taking things off the shelf. But what would happen there is data is king. If somebody has their own personal ability to make an appointment, to get a permit, things are faster. And also what COVID had done for people personally being able to do Zoom and others, you're going to have to find government be able to do that way too. But your customer service is better for the constituent. You're having more data, and you're going to have more efficiency within government that you can streamline. And the duplication so many times, and when you hear those stories with one person tells a story, you're mayor, but you don't know everything that's happening and everything that built upon bureaucracy before it. But then you hear some horror story where somebody tried forever, and they were polite, and they went through the system, and they've been waiting a year for something. You don't want that to happen. If you have greater technology, you'll have the data of where you're stovepiping, you'll have the data of where the customer service is, you'll have the data of what people are actually asking for instead of just going by a phone. And I think that will open up a lot. And you're going to have generationals, those who will want to deal with it and those who might not. But in my church, we do 3 different services. And the songs we sing in the first service and the last service are catered to those who are coming. And your city is a microcosm. It's different. And that's what I think would really save you money, but also provide you. And I'm a big believer, and this is where we should really work together, because we're going to want to be doing a lot about crime, but it's also a local issue. I think community policing is so much better. I mean, in our city, we built a fire station and police station in neighborhoods now. So it's not looked as police. The officer, her or him,
your neighbor.
Their children are going to the same schools as us. We know each other, right? We're in the neighborhood. And that's the only way, so we're not having this adversary play. And for these poor officers, fear they're going to be sued, fear they're going to get harassed, and they're coming in to protect. Look, my father was a firefighter, so I have a special place for any of the first responders. I know what they go through. And it's not a job, it's a way of life.
So I don't know if anybody here has ever been to a city called Marble, North Carolina. Just by a show of hands, anybody Marble, North Carolina? I don't think so. All right, it was my first time there last year. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. I went to a company that wanted to show me a Bitcoin mining facility in Marble, North Carolina. So now I got to tell you a little bit about Marble, North Carolina. Marble, North Carolina had a population of 40,000, and their whole entire population revolved around a Levi's manufacturing plant. And as you can imagine, in the Industrial Revolution, jobs went where costs were lowest, right? So that Levi's plant was shipped off to China, right? And so the population of Marble, North Carolina went from 40,000 to 400 when that plant closed, 400. And just recently, China banned mining, and just recently, China banned Bitcoin. And so what we're seeing now in Marble, North Carolina is what I call a tech industrial revolution. In other words, the jobs that were left in that plant was repurposed. It was turned into a Bitcoin mining facility. By the way, carbon neutral, because there's a lot of discussion about ESG concerns around Bitcoin mining, but this is done completely carbon neutral. And I know that concepts like Web 3.0, concepts like crypto, and concepts like NFT are very mystifying to many people. But they are the wave of the future. I mean, we just had Art Basel in Miami. It was probably the largest sale of NFTs.
We just did the first NFT. I put it out for Congress, and it was.
How'd it go?
It was good. Nobody bought it, but it was. It was a ticket for podcast.
I think the point I'm trying to make is we've got to educate people on what these technologies mean. And I feel like as a country, we have this generational opportunity to lean into this, right? And where China is, in my opinion, messing up, right? And giving us the opportunity of a lifetime by banning some of these technologies, we as a country need to wrap our arms around it. Whatever China's doing, we should be doing the opposite, frankly. But that's my personal opinion. How do we first educate the generation that didn't create this? And how do we lean into the next generation that has grown up with it to create a generation of prosperity for America?
Look, when I look at you, you know what I look at? The laboratories of our country. You have the ability to try things and risk and be different and diversify in all the others. And I remember talking to former governor of Texas, and he was taking a lot of jobs, and I said, how are you doing this, right? He said, you know what I found? People wanted to leave, but when they came to look at us, they also looked at the quality of life. They also looked, did we have, a symphony? Did we have the arts? Did we have the others? And each element, technology transforms us. And what the mayor is talking about is almost a movement, right? It's a movement in itself, and it's generational from older to younger, and it is the future. And you can it doesn't matter how small or big you are, but if you're smaller, you even have a greater ability because you have a greater market share. And it's more just an openness is, how can I help? You don't have to know the technology. You just have to be open to it, because people who are investing in this technology, and this is the way I sat with the mayor at the very beginning. When you bring in a new industry, everybody tries for the big plants and the others. I would go small. I would hit singles and doubles, because what happens is you have a greater relationship with them. They're more willing to work with them. But when one of these new technology hits and they create wealth, then you create a whole angel system of local people who created wealth, who then reinvest in the city, and it continues to build throughout. I would start with an incubation of one or two of these in a small, but I would embrace ones, and I would bring it into our schools and others, so you have young people starting it and just grow from there.
By the way, we started that way. We started with incubators, accelerators, a tech conference, and we're a bigger city. But I think what's interesting about this moment is that the world is more decentralized than ever. And so even though maybe capital allocation decisions are going to be made in larger cities, they're going to benefit everybody. I can't tell you the number of new companies that have started in Miami.
Do you know your biggest advocate is not yourself? So there is an individual, his name's Keith, and he was very successful. He was very successful in California. He's a
evangelist.
Yeah. He got so frustrated with how they treated him. He created thousands of jobs. He moves to Miami.
PayPal.
He meets him, but every day he's tweeting about how he's investing and bringing another company there. He's not doing that, but it's all because he loves what's happening there. And that's what you'll have. It won't be, you're a great marketer for your city, but you know what's better? It's someone that loves what's happening there. It's the ownership of telling, 10 more people. And he does it every day.
He does it every day. I love Keith. He's our number one evangelist without doubt. And Keith was one of the PayPal people that created PayPal, along with David Sachs and a little known guy, Elon Musk. You guys may have heard of him. Created a couple of companies after that.
But this is the other thing. We all think about who we're going to recruit in. You should all create a program to reward who's already there.
Absolutely.
Because Elon's a very good friend of mine, and Elon lived in California. He didn't want to leave California. He has SpaceX there. He has Tesla there. And when things became too difficult, it becomes a financial decision, and you have a responsibility to shareholders. When he said he was thinking of leaving, you know what the state rep did to him? Tweeted, F you, right? What I think, but he's probably at that point, you're not going to save him, right, when he left? But if you started doing things with people who are already there, you take your old Malcolm Baldwin Award or something else, people decide, I want to invest there because you care for who's already there.
Yeah, and that was another famous tweet, because he responded, message received. And so it was funny at the beginning when I did the How Can I Help People, sort of juxtaposed the two tweets, which is really a juxtaposition in attitude, right? And I think, it's not partisan, it's not political, it's just a juxtaposition in attitude. I just want to make one last point, because I think there's big and small cities here, many represented. And the point I wanted to make real quick was that as people are opening companies, even in Miami, many of them are built on a remote option, possibility or probability. What does that mean? That means that even though the company may be formed in one city, the jobs that company creates are being occupied in all of your cities, right? And I think that's a very, very, so when you're talking about creating a tech ecosystem in your own city, you can't just say like, well, Miami's a big city, there's this, there's that. No wonder why they're going to, no. Everyone has the opportunity to do it in your own way, and they're high-paying jobs. So I would urge you to do that, because it helps with other social issues in your city.
You know what I would do? Don't look at each other as competitive. You always think, they're narrowing it down to these 3 cities, and you all have sister city programs with sister cities in other countries. I'd create sister cities with each other. Why wouldn't you be a sister city to Miami? where they may put a headquarters, but they're going to put 100 to 200 jobs in these others. And once one does it, what happens is they talk to each other because there's a lot of investors together and said, oh, we set it up this way, and then why don't you go to South Carolina, North Carolina? We put a little hub there, and here's the infrastructure already set up. You can build upon each other a win-win.
So I was sort of commenting this off stage with you. One of my good friends, who was from the opposite party, obviously, was the mayor of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And he used to tell me, Mr. Mayor, in America, there's 3 parties. And I said, really, Bill, what are they? He goes, well, there's Republicans, yeah. There's Democrats, yeah. He goes, and there's mayors. And so, to your point, sometimes you can meet a mayor and have a prolonged conversation with them and never know what party they're from, right? Because for them, they are sort of instructed with just solving problems. We're problem solvers.
Look, I love to recruit mayors.
How do we take that sort of problem-solving attitude and bring it to a place of 17-degree weather in the eastern part of the country?
Hey, I'm from California. I don't like this weather either. I don't like your humidity either, but are those bugs, So, look, I think from a perspective, you are office holders. I'm an office holder. I'm federal government. You're a local city. How do we build that together? And as a nation as a whole, we define each other too much, right? If we start the definition as Americans, how are we going to help you more? How are you going to be more helpful to us? I think from a perspective, look, if we're willing to hold the gavel and the philosophy of what I would look at, I think things should always happen more local and have greater control. But I wouldn't look to the federal government to think we're just money to deliver something. I look for investments from a federal government we're going to invest as their partners. I think everything, so if you have skin in the game and we have skin in the game, there's more apt to make that happen. And I think we should look at ways that we should try things differently. I give a lot of advice. People go to college, take the courses you're not good at, do that. We should start disrupting what we're doing, just how you recruit these businesses that are disruptors because they find an ability to do something more efficiently. We should find that throughout. How can we be disruptors to make sure our constituents get better service? How can we make our cities more efficient?
I really hope that in part of the time and the tenure that I have the privilege of serving my brothers and sister mayors across the country, we can become a laboratory of solutions and proposing solutions to the federal government, and that we can continue to have these kinds of conversations because you can see, what an engaging, wonderful person the leader is, just like we have engaging, wonderful people that we're going to hear from later today, our president, and we have engaging, wonderful people that we heard from yesterday, the speaker. Everyone has a great story. Everyone has a really true desire inside to serve and to give back. We may look at the world a little differently, but we have a lot more in common than people want to admit in this sort of context of the narrative, the national narrative, the sort of the media wants to put out there.
That's what it is. Look, in D.C., you'll read all about us, but we vote together more than we vote apart. There's a lot of great friendships internally. But what happens is technology also does other things. They let you say about somebody you don't even know, and you'll say things differently. We have television stations that don't give us news but give us opinion, and you can get whatever opinion you want philosophically. As elected leaders, we should push to the places of how do we find greater common ground in the others and not judgment. I love the idea of laboratories throughout, and I'll promise you this. I am not shy. I'll steal any good idea you have and put it to a different level. I'll give you credit, but I'll take a lot of credit myself too because I found it and stole it. But to be competitive for the future, look, I think our 2 greatest threats in this world is the amount of debt that we have federally and China. They're innovating faster than we are. They're taking critical minerals and others. And I would never bet against this country when we're all focused in the same path. And I think a lot falls on your shoulders as well. I think you're natural leaders throughout. I think you have the ability to set tones. There's so many times something devastating happens in your city that you have no control over. But the way you handle it, the way you are the father, the mother to the city itself, you heal, you become healthier, but also what you do as America, we watch it and we're there with you. There's not a moment in time that we don't see one of those stories that we're not crying at the same time and we're not feeling. May it be a natural disaster or something else. And after that takes place, you find the greatness of the nation, that people come from all over just to provide food or shelter or others. I mean, when we start honoring those things and building those up better, I think people will look much more willing to do more of that.
And I'll just end on this note, while China may be taking raw materials for things like silicon microchips and things like that, that is at a worrying rate, they gave us a big opportunity with shutting down Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining.
Oh, yeah.
We should take advantage of it. I think that's something we can all work together. We're hoping to do a crypto compact in Miami on April. I invite you all to come and learn about crypto, obviously, first of all. But we want to have a guiding set of principles that we can send out to the federal government, because this is a unique moment in time. If we overregulate and stifle innovation, we crush it for a generation and we lose the competitive advantage that we have. Mr. Leader?
Even if you don't know about it, go to learn about it, because there'll be people in your community who know it well.
Leader, thank you so much for your
Thank you,
time.
and good luck.
Show too, buddy.
Appreciate you.
Love you, brother. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.